Hi, everybody. My name's Minnie Darke, and I'm coming to you tonight from my mother's spare bedroom in the suburb of Lutana on the beautiful island of Lutruwita, Tasmania. So I'd just like to start by paying my respects to the traditional owners of this island, the Palawa Pakana people, and to say that storytelling has been a really important thing that's happened on this land for thousands of years, and I'm proud to be part of that storytelling tradition. So I'm just going to start tonight by talking a little bit about my new book, With Love from Wish and Co., which is set in a place that some of you might already know. If any of you have read my previous novel, Star-Crossed, know the suburb of Alexandria Park, which is a fictional suburb in a fictional Australian city that might be described as the unholy love child of perhaps Melbourne, Hobart, and Perth. So 3 cities I love, and I think I rolled them all together into a fictional Australian city. So with Love from Wish and Co, I've returned to that neighbourhood, and that was quite a comforting thing to do, really, to go back to a neighbourhood that I already knew quite well. And there are a few tiny little intersections between the world of Star-Crossed and the world of With Love from Wish and Co. A few characters cross over here and there. So With Love from Wish and Co. is a story that started for me with an idle fantasy. So I don't know about you, but sometimes having a job can be, a bit of a downer. Sometimes your job is a bit tough. And like most writers, I have a day job. And a few years ago, my day job was getting me down, and I thought, I really need a new one. I need a new way of, um, you know, earning the money that is nice, stable money. So I clearly set my imagination to work on this task, and my imagination decided that I could do this job that I don't know if it even exists really. I could be a professional gift buyer. So I was thinking of those men in particular, although not exclusively men, I guess, who maybe don't have time to go shopping for gifts for the people in their lives. They know that that it's the thought that counts, but they don't actually really want to do that thinking, and they might be just as happy to have someone else do the thinking for them. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to perhaps just get the names and the birthdays of all of the people in someone else's life, and they could just set and forget, and you could make sure that the perfect gift for everybody in their life just turned up for them on the right date. I could imagine quite a lot of men who'd enjoy a service like that one. Now, of course, I never did become a professional gift buyer. I just kind of got on with it in my own day job. But it had planted a seed in my head. And one of the great perks of being a novelist is that you can change profession whenever you like. You can create a whole new world in which you more or less are a professional gift buyer. So I invented the character of Marnie Fairchild. And she is part of the Fairchild family who have been quite big in commerce in Alexandria Park for a few generations. And she has her heart set on relocating her shop to a beautiful heritage building that once belonged to her grandfather. It's been allowed to fall into terrible disrepair. It now belongs to her uncle. So she desperately wants to have the opportunity to purchase this building. And that's her dream. That's what she's longing for. So when the opportunity comes up for her potentially to actually buy this property, it causes her, in her state of excitement and distraction, to make a very uncharacteristic error, because she's usually very, very good at buying gifts for her clients, on behalf of her clients. And she's about to buy or present 2 gifts to her very best client, Brian Charlesworth. And one of these gifts is intended for his wife, Suzanne, with whom he is about to celebrate his 40th wedding anniversary. The other gift is destined for his lover, Leona, who is about to celebrate her 65th birthday. So 2 very different women, 2 very different gifts, but they are in 2 boxes that are about the same size and shape. What, I ask you, could possibly go wrong? So that's a little bit about With Love from Wish and Co. And I can tell you much more, of course. We've got time to chat. So I'd love to have your questions. I'll keep an eye on the comments that are coming up down the side of my screen. I can see that there are some folks from all over coming through, and I see that Mary is reading With Love from Wish and Co. for a book club. Well, that's great, Mary. I really hope that your book club enjoys it, and I hope that it will stimulate your group to have a bit of a discussion about gifts, and about what constitutes a really good gift and what maybe makes, not such a great gift. I bet that's something that would probably come up in a book club discussion. I did ask some friends of mine what were the best and worst gifts that they've ever been given as part of researching this book. And one really notable one that turned up in the book was a friend of mine was given by her aunt a single toothpick that had been brought back from overseas, still wrapped in its little cellophane packet. She'd picked it up from the airport, from the airline she'd travelled back. So she presented this toothpick to my friend. That's a pretty spectacularly bad present, I reckon. So I have a message from Sharon, and Sharon is asking me, how long did this book take you to write? Thanks for that question, Sharon. The book took me around about a year, but that probably wasn't entirely full-time, because I do juggle a few different things. So I work 2 days a week, and then there's the small matter of my 3 teenage children and my 2 dogs and 2 cats. So there's a lot going on in my life, but I write in a little timber caravan in my backyard. So that's where I escape from my family. If you can imagine one of the kinds of caravans that you might have seen in Roald Dahl's book, Danny, Champion of the World, little round roof and slightly diagonal sides. I have a little caravan like that in my garden, and that's where I work. So please keep the questions coming. I'm just having a look at the chat to see if there are any more from you here. So I did do some research about gifts and gift giving as part of writing this book, other than just asking my friends what was a good or a bad gift. And what I discovered is that not only have human beings been giving gifts for about as long as we can remember, it's also something that happens in animal communities. So there are some animal species that give and receive gifts. And so it turns out that gift giving isn't just a frivolous thing. It's actually really quite hardwired. It's one of the things we do to create and maintain our social bonds. So that was an interesting thing to learn. So back in animal communities, when you gave a gift to your intended, one of the things you were saying was, I want to make it easier for you to survive. I'm giving you this gift, this boon. So even though we might buy really quite frivolous things for people in our lives now, it's a tradition that really goes back to survival and to the creation of those social bonds that are now enable us to live in social environments. So I thought all of that was quite interesting. Melissa is asking me, is With Love from Wish and Co. a standalone, or is it best to read Star-Crossed first? Thanks, Melissa. That is a great question. Thank you for getting me to clarify that. They're both completely standalone books. So Star-Crossed is the story of a journalist who alters the horoscopes in the magazine that she works for, because there's a boy she likes. He's an Aquarius. She knows he reads his horoscopes and that he's quite superstitious about them. So she tweaks the the entries for Aquarians in order to try to catch his attention. But of course, there are all these other Aquarians out there in Alexandria Park reading their horoscopes and making very big life decisions based on having read their horoscopes in the Alexandria Park Star. So that's what Starcrossed is all about. With Love from Wish & Co. has a different cast of characters. There's Marnie Fairchild, the gift buyer. There's Brian Charlesworth and his wife Suzanne, who are about to have a very big problem in their 40-year marriage. And then there's their son Luke, whom Marnie meets and becomes quite interested in. And he has some very definite opinions about whether or not it is an honourable thing to do to go and ask someone else to buy gifts for you. He certainly has an opinion that maybe that's not an okay thing to do. I wonder what you all think about that. How would you feel if you found out that someone who gave you a really beautiful gift had actually employed a gift buyer to go and buy it for you? So Kate is asking me, do I find it hard to keep track of the different threads? Thank you, Kate. That's a great question too. Strangely enough, I don't really find it difficult to keep track of the different threads. And I wonder if here's a way of thinking about how writers operate. In your lives, you've got a huge cast of characters. There's your immediate family, there's your extended family, there's your friends, your colleagues, people in your community, and you can keep track of all of those people and what's going on in their lives. So the human brain probably has limitless capacity to keep track of other people and what's going on for them. But for writers, that's just happening on a couple of different planes at once. It's happening in real life, but it's also happening in our imaginations. So someone asked me the other day whether or not my characters talk to me. And I said, no, they definitely talk to each other, but I don't think I exist for them. I think they talk to each other and I eavesdrop. So that's another way of thinking about that. Kate is doing a great job with the questions here. 2 more questions from Kate. She's asking me, did I find it challenging to write a second novel? She's also curious about where I got my caravan. So Starcrossed was my first novel. My second novel was called The Lost Love Song. And that actually wasn't set in this universe of Alexandria Park. That one was set in what we might call the real world. And that's the story of a woman called Diana Clare, who writes a love song for her beloved. His name is Ari. And she hasn't quite finished it when she goes overseas on a concert tour. So she finishes it while she's away. But before she can ever return and play this love song for him, disaster strikes and she never does get home. So the question then is, could that love song all by itself, could it travel all over the world and intervene in various other love stories as it goes? And could it find its way back to Ari all by itself, just by passing from ear to ear and from heart to heart? So that was my second book, The Lost Love Song. And then with Love from Wish & Co., the one that just came out last week, that's my third novel. Do I find it hard to keep coming up with novels? Again, no, I don't really find that hard. Lots of ideas come to me. What's much harder is having the time to capture in words the things that I can see in my mind. So I remember listening to Elizabeth Gilbert talk. Some of you would know of Elizabeth Gilbert from reading books like Eat, Pray, Love, or her big novel, The Signature of All Things. And I remember her saying that you can imagine this beautiful, maybe something like a butterfly in your mind, but then when you actually try to make it with your writing, you end up with the equivalent of sort of a bit of lumpy Play-Doh and a few toothpicks, and it all looks a bit weird and munted. Um, and that is one of the frustrations of being a writer, is that you can see this thing in your head, but the time to catch all the right words and get them down on paper, that's the hard part. That's the really hard part. So stories come to me quite easily, but catching them and pinning them down, that's I find that hard. Um, and about the caravan, Kate, there's a chap in Hobart called Harry Wass, and he actually makes medieval musical instruments. But as a sideline, he makes these beautiful artist caravans, and his wife Tennille makes lead light windows for them and paints them, and they're very, very beautiful. So I feel really lucky to have bought one from him before he got really famous for them. So lucky me. Uh, so Melissa is thanking me for clarifying about the books. She's saying she read and enjoyed The Lost Love Song, but not Star-Crossed. I hope you get to Star-Crossed, Melissa, and I hope you enjoy it. Rosalind is also telling me she enjoyed The Lost Love Song. Thank you so much, Rosalind. That's really lovely to hear. Thank you. I really appreciate knowing that. This is an interesting time for me as a writer when a book's just come out, because you do spend a lot of time in your pajamas and on your own, and then the book comes out, and you all of a sudden you're talking to people that you've not met before over Facebook about the book that you've written, and you're becoming aware that there really are readers out there and it wasn't just your imagination. So please do send me any more questions that you've got as they occur to you. I'd love to be able to answer whatever you'd like to know. So let me tell you a little bit about something else interesting that happened in relation to writing with Love from Wish & Co. The building that Marnie desires to own is based on a real building in Hobart in Tasmania. It's a little place, 121 Harrington Street in Hobart. And there's a picture of it in the back of the book, so I'm just going to show it to you. There you go. I think you can see it now. So that beautiful little building was built in the 1870s here in Hobart, and it's had a really, really tough life. It's been the victim of a couple of arson attacks. There was a time when it was absolutely covered with graffiti. But when I was looking for a location for this imagined shop front, I just straightforwardly stole that property and described it in the novel. I pinched it, really. And when I had finished the novel, I was chatting to a friend and I said, wouldn't it be great if we could have a book launch at 121 Harrington Street? Now, it's quite a famous building here in Hobart. It featured on the ABC's Restoration Australia. You can still watch that program. It's still available online to stream, so you can find out all about this property. You can see pictures of just how badly it was damaged. And of course, Hobart being Hobart, I say to this friend of mine, wouldn't it be great if we could have a little book launch at 121 Harrington Street? She said, well, a friend of mine, it's her mum who owns the place. I could put you in touch. So I met the owners of the place, and last Saturday we had a very small little soiree event where we turned 121 Harrington Street into Marnie's shop with Love from Wish & Co. And so we served champagne, we served cupcakes, I signed books, and my mother, who is the world's best gift wrapper, wrapped the books to perfection and tied them up. And she used the same kind of spotty paper that you can see on the gift on the front cover of the book, and the same kind of red ribbon. So we just had a lovely day in that location, and we all thoroughly enjoyed turning that beautiful little shop into our very own Wish & Co. Kate is asking me, do I miss my characters once I finish writing a book? I do, but they never go away. They're still there in my soul in a really important way. So all the characters that I invented for Star-Crossed, they're all still in my heart and mind. all of the characters I invented for the Lost Love Song, they're all there too. I've been on these journeys with these people, so they're kind of etched into my memory. Since I finished with Love from Wish & Co., I've written a novella that will come out on Audible early next year, and it's called Wild Apples. And that's set in a place called Lovett, which is an imaginary place, once again. So if there are any Tasmanians listening to me talk right now, you'll know the small Huon Valley town of Cygnet. Well, once upon a time, Cygnet was called Lovett, just very briefly in its history. That was its name. So I have set Wild Apples in that town. And it's an apple growing town. And back in the 1950s, and this is true, this is a real story about Cygnet itself. Back in the 1950s and 1960s, the young women in the district competed to be crowned the Apple Queen. So that was a bit like being Miss Tasmania or Miss Australia, but you had to be very knowledgeable about the apple industry in order to win this crown. And then you would be sent off around Australia on a bit of a whistle-stop tour to talk about the apple industry here in Tasmania. So one of the characters in that book was an apple queen in her youth. So that was a fun thing to research and to write about. But that one doesn't come out until early next year, so we'll have to wait a little while for that. And that one won't ever be a ink and paper book. That will only ever be an audiobook. Please do ask me any other questions that you've got about writing, about With Love from Wish & Co., anything you like. You ask and I'll tell you. So, With Love from Wish & Co. Starts with the terrible mix-up when Marnie has these two gifts, one intended for Suzanne, one intended for Leona, who is Brian's lover. And one of the scenes I most enjoyed writing, and that has had I've had quite a lot of feedback about, was the scene in which Suzanne opens this gift right in the middle of her the luncheon that she has prepared for her 40th wedding anniversary. So she's gathered her friends, her family to her dinner table, and she's created this beautiful lunch. And actually, something else you might like to know is that the menu for that lunch is in the back of the book too. So if you ever want to recreate Suzanne and Brian's 40th anniversary lunch, you can do that. So there she is, and she's received this gift from her husband, although it's been bought by Marnie, and she's opening the present, and when she opens it, it is immediately very clear that this gift is not intended for her. And so this is quite an excruciating moment for her to realize this in front of her children, her grandchildren, the people who were her bridesmaid and best man at their wedding. So quite a crushing moment. And for Leona, who also gets the wrong present, it's not quite so devastating, but it's still mystifying what's in her box, the thing that was actually intended for Suzanne. So Sarah is asking me, how did the publishing process go? Thank you, Sarah. That's a lovely question. So here in Australia, I publish with Penguin Random House. My publisher is the very beautiful Bev Cousins. I love working with Bev. She's just a really smart reader who enjoys the kind of stories that I tell. So I think she and I are a bit of a match made in heaven, really. So this is the third book we've worked on together, and there will be more. But in addition to being published here in Australia, With Love from Wish & Co. is also published in the USA. So here is, just trying to get it in the right spot so you can see it. Here is the American edition of With Love from Wish & Co. So there's been a little bit of a chatter in the world about which cover people like best. I think people seem to like the Australian cover best. So maybe you could tell me what you think. Kate is asking me a question here. She's saying, how did With Love from Wish & Co. come to you in the first place? Was it a character, a scene, or the premise of the mix-up? I think it was just the idea of being a professional gift buyer. I just loved the idea of being able to buy gifts on someone else's behalf. So I should tell you that once I was at a party, and there was a man who I know peripherally, and I'm really aware that he's the sort of person who's used to being able to solve any problem by throwing money at it. And his child, who was only a toddler, did one of those terrible, terrible, terrible nappies. And so he presented this child to his wife and said, I can't do it. I haven't got another nappy in me today. I will give you $1,000 if you will change this nappy. And I couldn't believe it because, for one thing, this is his wife. His $1,000 is her $1,000 anyway. But that idea of being able to solve anything with money really stuck with me. And I thought, yeah, I can just imagine there being men who would just love the idea of paying someone to just take care of all their gift-giving needs. So that's what Brian does in this story. But when his son Luke finds out that that's what he's been doing for years, he's really quite horrified. But the gifts that Brian has been employing Marnie to buy for his son Luke have been so perfect that Luke then gets quite fascinated with Marnie. He thinks, how does she know what I would like? How she picked me so perfectly with these beautiful gifts? So even though they've never met before the story starts, they do know each other in a way because she's been buying gifts for him for years. So consensus seems to be that you all like the Australian cover. Yes, everybody's telling me they like the Australian cover best. Well, that's great. The moment when a book cover is chosen is a really interesting moment, and there are so many different ways that book jackets can go, and they end up being so important to the book's destiny. So I get to say yes or no, I like a cover, but I don't really get to design it myself. So I get to have some input, but not as much as you might think. And the great thing is that there are people out there in the world who've spent their life getting good at designing book jackets. So that's their part of the process, and my part of the process is to write the stories. So I see that we have just a couple of minutes left. It's been lovely to spend some time with you. I hope that I've told you enough about With Love from Wish & Co. that you will have a special insight into it if you decide to read it. So if you have any last-minute questions for me, please ask me. You can find me on Facebook and on Instagram. And on Facebook at the moment, you'd be able to find some pictures of that little building, 121 Harrington Street, and the event that we had last weekend. And coming up this week, the fabulous Australian writer Carmel Bird is going to launch the book for me again here in Hobart. And Debbie has given me a lovely question that might be a perfect one for us to end with. Debbie is asking me, what would my perfect present be? Well, I have to say I'm very, very fortunate that my husband actually has bought me the perfect present twice. So the first time was when we had only been together for a fairly short time, and I really wanted a puppy, and he bought me a grey Kelpie from the little town of Cunderdin in Western Australia. And that Kelpie was the most stunning and fabulous dog. And he was with us in our lives for 13 years. So you can probably guess what the second perfect present was. It was another little grey Kelpie from Cunderdin in Western Australia. And his name is Jem, and he's now 4 years old, and the love of my life. So I think for me, perfect gift, a puppy. So Thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight. Thank you for reading my books and for being readers. Um, it's a lovely thing to be able to talk to readers and get a sense of um, what you're thinking and just to get a sense that you're out there. So wherever you are in Australia tonight, have a lovely evening. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with you.